All right, guys, we're live. I assume not very many people are showed up yet, but um, it is great to be here on this Thursday lunchtime. Um, hopefully, y'all are hanging out and listen to us on your lunch break or elsewhere. Today, we're redoing the vote for, or discussing at least the vote for the Grammy Awards that were, or Album of the Year award that was awarded in February of 1996. So for albums that were released between October 94 and September 95 was that window. And this is one of the ones that we're actually discussing the album that did win that year. Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. And but this also during this album cycle was TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool, which was also massive. So this ought to be an interesting conversation because these are, I mean, you could make an argument of being two of the top 10 albums of the 90s. Like they are at least in that conversation for sure. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be tough to decide, I think. So morning, Coop. It's good to see you. Well, it's not morning, but good to see you anyway.
Well, it was morning when we started talking. Now it's the afternoon.
Yeah.
Thanks for pulling up to the lunch hour on Mirror Music. Click like and subscribe to our page. Summer times are great for us because you're a teacher and this is when your free time permits. I'm going to hit the people with some breaking news that I just shared with you. I've decided to go back to school because I want to teach as well. I was
He's gonna be really good at it too. Yeah.
I was having some fun last week when talking about Method Man and Redman at Summer Jam and referencing some punk ass kids. But
Yeah.
A couple things have happened in my life in the past week, and it's given me the revelation that it's like, well, instead of talking about these punk ass kids, I should probably help these punk ass kids.
Yeah, they need help, right? I sent y'all that message actually to the hip. This is, for those of you who don't know, I assume everybody watching this would know, but this is the sister podcast or brother podcast, I guess you would call it, with Hip Hop Talks, which is an exclusive hip hop podcast. This is a podcast trying to pull these worlds together, right? But I sent a message to the Hip Hop Talks crew, which I do more behind the scenes stuff with, that, if it is okay to rail on the, use your quote, punk ass kids, it is fine to do that because they do need to be educated. But also now we are of the age that we need to be in some ways taking some responsibility for educating them, both musically and otherwise, right? So that is, those of you, I assume most of you know this who are watching this, but I've been a teacher for 21 years. Next year will be 22. So it's a wonderful, we've talked about this. This is, I guess, a sidebar, but again, these conversations mirror our actual conversations in real life too, right? So
Right.
that lots of people of my age bracket, our age bracket, have, I don't want to say are having midlife crises necessarily, but they are having like, has what I've done with my life so far made any impact in the world kind of trains of thought? And that's a normal thing for people that are turning 40 or 45 or whatever. And teaching is difficult in tons and tons and tons of ways. And it is difficult and it is trying and is exhausting and stressful and all of those things. But that's one thing that I never have to ask myself, is whether I've made a difference in the lives of people. Like that one I know for sure. So it at least crosses that off of my list, so to speak.
Well, part of what's making the transition so easy for me is that, when I'm in the city and I'm actually out and about, I run into so many people that I have trained and coached in the hospitality business that have been like, hey, Coop, like I learned so much from you. And, and this translated to me being successful in this field because of this, that,
Like
and
I
the
said,
other.
you'll be good at it. Like this is something that you have
And I don't necessarily have to go back and get my degree if I wanted to start teaching right now because I do
Yeah.
have my bachelor's degree. But I'm also an intelligent person and understanding that somebody with a master's degree commands a little bit more, you know, annually
Compensation.
on
Yes.
the per diem. Yeah,
Yes.
the per diem looks a little different when you got your master's. So
It does, it does. But you could also start without it too, like, it's
yeah, which I'm about to like explore.
yeah. Yeah, you can
But
start
right
teaching
now,
business classes just as an example for tomorrow, just because that's what your degree's in, but, I mean,
yeah,
clearly you're capable of teaching whatever, but, like
yeah, no, thank you.
but
Actually, the university that I'm alumni of, Kennesaw State, is actually looking for an event coordinator right now.
mm,
And I'm actually going to go talk to the university tomorrow about the event coordinating position, some introductory teaching, and my master's. So I actually going back on campus tomorrow.
that'd be
Tell you a
good.
little, yeah, yeah. I look forward to it. It's 15 minutes from my house. That's part of how I ended up getting my degree from there anyway. It's like, man, I was like,
This is
it's a
close.
nice college campus about 15 minutes from my house.
Let's go
It's like,
take care of this.
yeah, I should probably, go get my bachelor's. Most people think that I'm academically inclined and should have a few degrees,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
But let's explore. I do agree with you. Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill and TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool are I think think it's a safe thing to say that they're both top 10 albums of the 90s.
I think so.
They check every single box on every single level, respectively.
Yeah,
I know Jagged Little Pill won.
it did.
So, and personally, I love Jagged Little Pill. It's one of my favorite albums.
Yeah, I do too. I was listening to it again this morning. I haven't listened to it in, I don't know, 6 months or so, just, like, sitting down and listening to it all the way through. Um, and I'd forgotten how good it was all the way through. Like, it's hit after hit after hit after hit after hit after hit, like, it's and even and I'm sitting here thinking, like, even the ones that weren't released as singles might be my favorite songs on there too.
So I realized something that because Jagged Little Pill is actually that good and actually did win, like we've been discussing albums. I think this and Joshua Tree are
Mhm.
the only albums that won
Right.
where it's like, I understand
Yeah, that's probably right, yeah.
why it won.
Yeah.
And as crazy as this may seem, I think I may have an even better case for Crazy Sexy Cool than I did with Sign of the Times by Prince.
Wow.
And I think Sign of the Times is a superior record to Crazy Sexy Cool.
Yeah.
But Crazy Sexy Cool, I didn't realize how really groundbreaking and genre bending and genre breaking the album was until I went back and listened to it, because I hadn't listened to it in a long, long time. Like it's
Right.
been years since I listened to Crazy
Yeah, of course,
Sexy
we've
Cool
heard the
from beginning
songs
to end.
before, like Creep and
Yeah,
Waterfall, like, you hear those in
I'm
whatever, but
I'm literally familiar. Like I could probably run the track listing of the album down for you in
Mhm.
order in my mind. It's one of those albums that I've listened to that much. But I had forgotten just how truly special the album was. And I want you to listen to what I'm about to say when I
Mhm.
say this. Not only is it arguably the best R&B album of the 90s, but it's the most 90s of all the great R&B albums of the 90s. The other
I'm all for that.
albums and the other groups that are in their stratosphere
Mhm.
are 70s groups redone.
Are they really? Okay.
In Vogue, like In Vogue's Born to
Mhm.
Sing and Funky Divas
Yeah.
is the Supremes on steroids.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
Yeah.
Jodeci and Boys to Men
Different
are like,
Temptations and yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they're the Temptations in 60s. Well, the Boys to Men
4
is more
Tops.
six.
Yeah.
Yes, Boys to Men is more Four Tops kind of doo-wop, like harmonized,
Yeah.
like in Jodeci is more of a modern day Temptations. Um, Mary J. Blige's My Life and R. Kelly's 12 Play are more like, like they're pulling from a place, and
Right.
even the samples are pulling from the place that comes from the 70s
Right.
soul.
Okay.
TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool is a 90s R&B album. Nothing about it sounds 70s.
No, not at
There's
all.
no there's no point in that album that doesn't feel like a new era. And so it's the album that's most indicative of its era of all the great R&B albums, which is I think what makes it the best, if
Okay.
that makes sense. Like, no,
Yeah.
this album sounds like 1990 to 1995 for Black people in rhythm and blues, like in a modern way. Like, it's old now, but then it was like they were actually ahead of the curve. They were creating the sound that would actually be the sound. Them and Belle Biv DeVoe created the sound that would be the sound for the rest of the 90s. And it's that R&B that has a hip hop feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Mary J. Blige does that, but My Life is her best project, and it's more soulful than it is.
Yeah.
Like What's the 411 has a lot of that, but I think Crazy Sexy Cool is just like a superior album to What's the 411. It just is. Nothing against Mary. Yeah. It's just better from beginning to end. And as big as the songs are on What's the 411, the songs on Crazy Sexy Cool are bigger because they're better.
Yeah.
Now,
my oldest child was laughing at me dancing in the kitchen to Red Light Special earlier today. Like, that's like, how do you not dance to like that? How is that? I can't. That's one of those. Even when I'm thinking about the song in my head, I'm sitting here going, well, I mean, I'm right. Like, I'm not.
For me personally, I think Red Light Special is the best song on the album.
Good. Like that. Again, that's another one of those examples of how my ear has because I was like
Yes.
that. Like that one and Waterfalls together in the middle of the album, that was just like a 1-2.
It's over the top. Yeah, it takes it over the top. Yeah. I think Red Light Special just in a vacuum is better than Waterfalls.
I agree. As a song, just as a song, yeah.
Just as a song, yes. But since we're bringing up,
you know why? It sounds like a Prince song. That's why. And that clicks in with what you're. That was my first note I wrote on this page. Is this whole album has a Prince feel to me a little bit.
Okay, so now you're taking some of my notes because it's like never has a group channeled a male artist and expressed it from the female perspective the way that this album goes. This album does play like how about this? If Prince would have made another classic album in the 90s, it would sound like this.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's like, this sound like I told you this beforehand too, that obviously I know Creep and Waterfalls and like I knew the big songs on here, but I don't know that I'd ever sat down and listened all the way through to this record. And the Prince thing, you hear a little bit in Red Light Special and you hear it in pieces in the other big songs, but when you sit down and listen to it back to front, you're like, this has a feel like Purple Rain and Sign of the Times. Like it has that kind of that kind of rhythm to it, like track to track to track to track, and how it connects to each other.
Yes. I mean, and there's even a Prince remake from Sign of the Times because they redid If I Was Your Girlfriend from Sign of the Times on this album.
I knew that from. Okay, I was like, I know this song from somewhere. Where do I know this from?
They actually did a Prince remake on this album. Yeah, and it actually too, and it's one of the few times I say this, they actually did it just as funky as he did it.
It was like
it's one of the better songs on the album too. But
and if you can say about anything that you ever did almost as funky as Prince did it, then you're saying something.
Well, this is also one of those special albums that it's like, no, everybody has their favorite record because there's plenty of favorite records to choose from. But here's what I realized, and I've always known it, but I can look back on it now with a different perspective. This is the super producer R&B album, kind of like Illmatic is the super producer hip hop album. Okay.
Is this pulling up all the Atlanta people? Was that
this?
I know they're Atlanta thing, or is this everywhere?
Here. Listen to the producers of this album, like the people who actually like did the tracks and put the songs together. Chucky Thompson and Puff Daddy. Okay. For those who don't know who Chucky Thompson is, Chucky Thompson worked on Ready to Die, and Chucky Thompson did All of My Life by Mary J. Blige.
Oh wow, those are big names or big projects.
Babyface wrote Red Light Special and Let's Do It Again. So you've got Puff, you got Chuck, you got Babyface, Jermaine Dupri, Dallas Austin.
I was about to say I knew Dupri was on here. Yeah.
Yeah, Kick Your Game is Jermaine Dupri. Kick Your Game is one of those records that like was never a single, but used to like play in the clubs down here and like play like on the radio because it was just such a dope record. So Jagged Little Pill has some records like that too.
Yeah.
Dallas Austin and Organized Noise produced on this album as well. Rico Wade, rest in peace, who just passed away. Rico Wade produced Waterfalls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's an
Oh,
Organized Noise
I think
production.
that's what I that's one of those many things that I heard years ago. Like I knew somehow back in there that Rico Wade was involved with
Yes.
Waterfalls or whatever, but I didn't know who he was. And
Yeah.
until I watched your conversations about Outkast and Organized Noise and stuff like that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it wasn't until right now that I like connected that dot together.
So if I'm not mistaken, T-Boz and Rico grew up together. Like same neighborhood type shit.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. Like T-Boz is the connecting thread in TLC. Left Eye's from the Midwest, and Chili wasn't originally part of the group. So T-Boz is actually like the core foundational member. But in 1993-94, Dallas Austin, that's Atlanta. Jermaine Dupri, that's Atlanta. Organized Noise, Atlanta.
Yeah.
There's a verse from Andre on here
Yeah,
that
that was
actually
one
on
of
the
those
last song
moments
of the album.
I had this morning when I was listening to, because I was listening to the end of it this morning. I was just sitting at the table writing notes, eating breakfast or whatever, and I heard his voice come on. I was like, "Wait, did we have because I thought like the algorithm had just jumped, like finished this album and moved on to the next thing. I was like, wait, I mean, I recognize his voice immediately, obviously,
Of course.
but like,
It's actually
oh,
one of his
Andre's on here.
it's one of his better verses too. Organized Noise produced that song too. Remember the time back in the only sign we had was Picket, but in 1994 it be this way something come wicked. G Ang's killing others for colors, things that we take for fashion. Other brothers take it for a reason to be blasting. What the cuff is going on? Not soft like buttercups, but had enough singing that same song. See, I grew up the street around the project to call your mama trash and groceries. To man, he was. This is a young version of him. This is actually one of his better.
Southern Playlistic, right? Just after that. That was April-ish of that year? Because this came out in November of 94, I believe.
It did. How about this? I feel like this is like probably right after they got done recording Southern Playalistic.
Yeah.
Like right after, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, this album, CrazySexyCool, got recorded from like March to September of that year.
So it would have been overlapping almost, yeah.
Yes. A couple of background things. Left Eye is not as prominent on this album as she should be, although her presence is felt. She was in a very tumultuous relationship with the Atlanta Falcons star receiver Andre Rison. She accidentally burned down his mansion.
She went in the bathtub.
Yes,
well, she probably was doing that too, but
no, she did that shit. She'll tell you she did that shit.
Yeah.
She had some alcohol problems and had to go to rehab during the recording of this album. If you go listen to Ooh on the TLC tip, Left Eye actually, people understand Left Eye was a singer, a songwriter, and a dope MC.
Okay.
And her presence on this album is felt, but it was a good thing for the group that she wasn't totally in the forefront, because it allowed all the other guys, the Jermaine Dupri's, the Dallas Austins, the Babyface, the Chuck, the Puff, like everybody to kind of come in and get behind TLC and make it work. Ooh on the TLC slip was a big hit and a big record, big splash. I think Ooh on the TLC tip did like 3 million copies.
That was before this, right?
Yes, that's 1992, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like they had Ooh on the TLC tip has What About Your Friends, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Baby Baby Baby. And if I'm not mistaken,
R&B 70s remakes, yeah. Right.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Left Eye wrote What About Your Friends and Ain't Too Proud to Beg. The Condoms Over the Eye, that was like the whole thing, that's all Left Eye. And so she's not left out on this album. But on this album, T-Boz and Chili are more in the front than they are on Ooh on the TLC tip. Ooh on the TLC tip is more Left Eye's brainchild. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying?
I see what you're
This
saying.
is more of a collaborative piece, and it worked to the benefit of the group because it highlighted T-Boz's raspy vocals more. It highlighted Chili's singing prowess more because she was the singer of the group,
Right.
quote unquote. But when Left Eye's there, she's there, and it's beautiful.
As
Waterfalls,
I say, slip in that verse in Waterfalls, just for example. Yeah. That's
yeah. Switch, you know, some of her talking, like Kick Your Game. You know what I'm saying? So she's there, but not as there as much on the first album. But it gave the album a cohesiveness because
right.
she wasn't taking on the task of writing all these songs by herself, like which kind of happened some with the first album.
Yeah.
But what I would tell you, and this is the case that I would make for Crazy Sexy Cool over Jagged Little Pill.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of groups have come that have tried to be like TLC after this album, and none of them were able to match that level. And also, content matters. And so, content wise, Crazy Sexy Cool, although that's the message, as in, like, you know, crazy is supposed to be Left Eye,
I was gonna
sexy.
say, they even have them in that order on the cover. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Crazy is supposed to be Left Eye, sexy is supposed to be Chili, and cool is supposed to be T-Boz. Right. But this album has content.
mhm. I mean, the content of Waterfalls is like a
Yeah.
very
But something wicked this way comes too. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so so content wise, I feel like, well, they took a couple of leaps, quite frankly, that diamond selling albums usually don't have.
right.
Diamond selling albums usually don't have a waterfalls on them.
Mm.
You know, like I love Purple Rain and Thriller. They don't have a waterfalls level content style record on there. And so they kind of broke the mold from what even a diamond selling album sounds like.
Right.
Because, well, yeah, there's all the hits and all the big records, but the record that actually pushed them to diamond is actually a conscious concept record produced by a hip hop production team.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some groundbreaking rules going on with Crazy Sexy Cool. And that would be my case that I would state against Jagged Little Pill winning over Crazy Sexy Cool is that this broke more boundaries, it broke more borders. It's more of a trailblazing album, and the
Mm-hmm.
content and the message of the album runs a little deeper.
Okay.
Because there's nothing bad that I can say about Jagged Little Pill, so I have
Right.
to express the right because
Right.
in both of our hands are flawless albums, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah.
Like both of these albums, you can play from beginning to end
I just did.
with nothing
Yeah.
wrong. Like even the intro to Crazy Sexy Cool. So that's Fife from Tribe Called Quest.
Okay. I knew I recognized that voice. I was like,
Yeah,
I couldn't place it.
that's Fife from Tribe Called Quest. The bars that he's spitting come from some of the bars come from Check the Rhyme off the Low End Theory.
Mm. Again,
Used to
that's why I
have a crush.
recognized it.
Used to have a crush from Dawn on In Vogue. It's not like Honey Dipper want to get with me, but just in case I got more condoms than TLC. Like he said that on Check the Rhyme.
Mhm.
And so it just lets you know that TLC was in tune with the times too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He had name dropped them on the Low End Theory. And
So they got him to come give his
yeah, and
verse.
so it's
Yeah.
just one of those things where it all comes together. You know what I'm saying? Puff Daddy's doing interludes on this album. You know what I'm saying? When the
Mhm.
fuck does Puff do interludes for people that like aren't signed to Bad Boy or Uptown? You know,
Yeah.
like they had a lot of pull, is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And so this album for me, and I'll say this with confidence now that I've listened to it from beginning to end, it's the best R&B album of the '90s,
It's
and
very, very good. Very good.
that's why, I mean, because here's the thing, Jodeci's first and second album doesn't finish the way this album finishes.
Mhm.
You know, R. Kelly's 12 play would be the conversational piece that I would probably have. I don't think it's as strong at the end as this album. Erykah Badu's Baduism, same thing.
Yeah. I love
Like
that
none of
record.
the, yeah. Mary J. Blige is My Life. I would probably like, for me, it would probably be between Crazy Sexy Cool and My Life,
Mhm.
because both of them are from beginning to end. But
Right.
nothing against Mary, these songs are just bigger. Like Creep and Red Light Special and Waterfalls are bigger than the records. that are on My Life, and they're more indicative of the times. Like I'm Going Down is a Rolls Royce remake. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I mean about it. It's like, well, no, it's got some 70s to it. Like Crazy Sexy Cool is the 90s R&B album that's indicative of the 90s,
Right.
indicative of the style, the trend, the people, and they just came together. The videos were
Yeah, those are
top
videos
notch.
that like right actually for both of them, for Atlantis's too, and for this one. Like those are
Yeah,
videos that I can like I've not watched any of those videos in 25 years probably, and I can immediately pull them to my mind. Like I
and
can
and
see
and
them.
and they had grown up too. Like when you're seeing the Creep video for the first time and you're seeing them like in silk pajamas, it's like, oh no, these girls were like sagging their pants
Mhm.
and like in college dorms, like having water gun fights on the last album. Those were the
Yeah.
visual aids, and wearing condoms over their eyes. That was the visual aid of the last album. It's like, and then you get to this album and it's like, oh no, they have
These are
matured
adults
into,
now. Yeah.
yeah. And there's just little moments where it's like you see the personality. I mean, Left Eye's obviously the personality of the crew. Like she's literally walking on her hands in the Creep video.
Yeah.
It's just one of those images that stays with you. So there are so many like undeniable images that they provided on top of the music. Everybody, remembers Left Eye's part on Waterfalls, where she's actually in the waterfall
Mhm.
spitting that verse. And Left Eye doesn't get enough credit as an MC. Like a lot of has been made in hip hop about women not writing their own rhymes. And she comes from an era where women did have a lot of the rhymes written for them, but nobody wrote her rhymes. As a matter of fact, she wrote her rhymes and wrote a lot of these hit records.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's like a super talented young woman that never really got to see her full potential, but never got her full credit either. So those would be my reasons and rationales for picking Crazy Sexy Cool, because musically I can't just tell you, oh well, Crazy Sexy Cool is better. It's like, oh, it's better if you're an R&B fan, but just
Yeah.
musically and objectively speaking, much like the Dookie Enter the Wu-Tang conversation, and much like the Joshua Tree and Sign of the Times conversation, it's like, oh, I can't tell you musically that one is far superior to the other one,
There's
but I can
different.
give you some details of why I would pick this one over that one. Like I still picked Sign of the Times over Joshua Tree. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's like, no, calling that a draw is no bad thing. Same thing with Dookie and Enter the Wu-Tang. And we might be headed down that same road
It
today.
seems like we're headed that today too. To start with, Waterfalls, the song, did get a Song of the Year nomination that year. But Crazy Sexy Cool was not nominated for Album of the Year. It wasn't on the short list which is
That's tragic.
wrong and bad.
Yeah.
It was I looked it up. Hold on. Michael Jackson's History was on that one. Pearl Jam's Vitology, which is a great album, but it's not that at all. Joan Osborne's Relish, not at all. The other one that actually would not be a horrifying choice for that, Mariah Carey's Daydream was that year too, which is not this, but it's not as bad as like.
There's nothing wrong with Daydream.
Yeah.
Daydream's biggest problem might be that she had made better the previous album. Like Vision of Love is a better album than Daydream. So
yeah, and Joan Osborne's album is really good too, but only had like 2 real songs on it. And I mean, it was good, but it was not like, you know who Joan Osborne is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But not familiar musically, but familiar
That's
with the
the
name.
What If God Was One of Us song. That's Joan Osborne.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And yeah, so it's a great album. It is good. It's not, but it doesn't belong in the conversation with these two. It doesn't. It just doesn't.
No, this is some of some of that high level like stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, I don't really like arguing about this because I think both of these are very high level albums, but I will say this, or these things. Alanis, Jagged Little Pill is triple diamond. It's 33 million worldwide. Yeah. It had on Wikipedia, it only listed 6 singles, but I remember there being a 7th. Right Through You was not listed on that, but it should be. Also, I found this out this morning too when I was reading through stuff that she had only the first, I'll say it like this, the first single was released from Jagged Little Pill, You Ought to Know, the one that kind of catapulted her into superstardom, was released in July of 95.
Okay.
The last single was released in November of 1996, so a year and a half of.
Mhm.
I remember it being kind of a joke that people were exhausted of seeing her face, like, but because it was a year and a half of single after single after single after single, and they could have gone more deep too. There are other good songs on this album that didn't get released as singles as well.
Both of these albums did a good job of staying on the charts and in consciousness. I mean, Crazy Sexy Cool is the first
Mhm.
album by a female group to go diamond.
Wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Like, think
that's
about
true.
that. It's like,
Not the
so that's what
Supremes,
I
not
mean.
like, yeah, sure,
So
like,
this is what I mean when I'm saying, talking about the groundbreaking moment of it. It's like, oh no, they're the first group to go diamond, and it's a trio of black women from Atlanta, Georgia. It's
yeah.
like, yeah,
It's also
it's like,
personal to you a little bit too. Yeah.
oh, I mean,
Yeah.
just
Maybe
quick,
not just a
quick,
little bit. But
quick story. I actually ran into them at Perimeter Mall right before I moved to Charlotte.
mhm.
And they're so short and so young looking. I actually thought they were my age, and I tried to talk to them, and they laughed at me.
And they're a little bit older than us, right? Like, not
Yeah, they're about
not dramatically, but like 5
like
years or so.
5, 6 years, like
Yeah,
about 5, 6 years older than
yeah,
us. But they were like, little boy, we're grown. I was like, y'all are grown. I was like, shit, because
I tried.
because Ooh on the TLC tip it was already out, so they were already like big. You know what I'm saying? And I actually ran into them at Perimeter Mall, like right by the entrance. I can't
Mhm.
remember which store that I saw them in, but it's like I was like, oh shit, that's TLC. It's like I thought they were our age, Andrew. Because they look so young, they were so good looking, but they looked young and they were small. And here's the thing, like the height that I was when I was like 12 years old, it's like, oh no, no, no. Me and them, we was at eye level. They weren't like tall girls. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But they were also like super approachable. Like they turned me down so nicely. Like they laughed. It was a healthy laugh though.
Yeah. Not a pat your head, but like it from what
It
you
was not.
I'm
It was.
saying
I'm too
what it
old for you.
sounds like from you is it sounds like if you were a little bit older than, like, as opposed to, like,
They would have entertained me more had I been actually a grown man, seeing how I was like a 12-year-old talking to women who were about 17, 18 years
yeah,
old.
I mean,
So they were like, oh,
no 17-year-old is gonna entertain to like, that's just not
right. So they're like, oh, that's cute. Find somebody your own age.
but good for them. I mean, that's and at that point, it's probably illegal too, not
That's
just
that's actually one of my last memories of like living in Atlanta, was actually like running into them at Perimeter Mall. But this was also around the time where like all the Atlanta stars like still went to
Mhm.
like all the local places. Like
Yeah,
you could catch Goody Mob at Foot Locker. You know what I'm saying? You
right.
could catch TLC like at Perimeter Mall. Like, that was like old
Mhm.
Atlanta. The access was there. I don't want to sidebar too far. We can keep it about the music, but yeah, I just
No,
wanted
it's
to share
it's
that
it's
story.
it's a story that's actually about the artist that we're discussing, like, it's not, you seem to have stories about everybody or lots of people anyway, so,
I've
um
met a whole lot of these people some sort of way or another, and the crazy thing about it is that, like, when people, like, look at me, they're like, "How did," they're like, it I've never tried. It's just always happened to me my whole life. So, it's kinda one of those things. I feel like maybe I am destined to kinda, like, be in this space to talk about music and talk about these things, because I have met a good bit of these people and had some sort of interaction with them on some sort of level at some point in time, and it's usually been random. That's the
yeah,
beautiful thing about it. I've never like had to seek it out. It's like it kind of just happened. It's like the Michael Jordan thing. It's like, no, that just happened. He just fell in my lap. He like literally just came back 2 weeks later. I'm like, this motherfucker came back. I'm like, oh shit. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't nothing like I was like trying to make it happen. It just has always happened. So it's like it's good. I can reflect now and have all these stories and look back and smile and be like, I've really been blessed that my stories have happened the way that they've happened, because they've happened organically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys, if you have not followed the podcast for a long time, there's a great episode where we talk about Joni Mitchell, and I forget who the other one was in that one, where Coop tells a story about dancing in the club with Janet Jackson. That's one of my favorite of the stories. I might like go cut that. It's actually I did cut it as a separate video. It's back in our channel somewhere. You can find it.
That's that That's probably my favorite music person moment.
Yeah, she seemed like
Yeah,
from your story. It sounded like she's just a really cool human being. Like.
she was awesome. Like, I mean, how many times in your life are you going to be able to get to dance with Janet in a club,
And
like
her backup
after
dancers too.
hours? Huh?
And her
Yeah.
backup dancers too, yeah.
Yeah. No, no, no. It was the whole crew. It was like her crew and my crew. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah. And like everybody was just gigging and having a good time. Like, yeah, she was. It was Janet. It was kind of like, oh shit, it's Janet, and then we realized she was cool, and then it was like, oh shit, we're
We should all
dancing with
dance.
Janet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was just one of those things. You know what? Her dancers were the ones that kind of like got it started, and one of my guys named Delrick. I think Delrick was probably about 19
Mhm.
when I was 26, 27 when this happened. And quite frankly, he shouldn't have been in the spot that we were in because he needed to be 21 to be in there.
Yeah.
But he was a dancer and a singer, and he was the one that was like, "Oh, he's like her dancers just got up. He's like, we gotta go, we gotta make this happen." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "He's like, you can't leave me out here alone." And so I kind of rounded everybody up, and I
You're
was
right,
like,
though.
"Come
Like,
on."
when else in your life are you gonna get the chance to do that? You might as
Yeah,
well.
and she was cool. Like we didn't fan out, so it's like you know, it was just a nice little gig session. Everybody was just gigging and dancing together. It was a good time. You know, we danced, we drank, we partied with Janet. That was cool.
That should be the tagline for this episode. We danced, we drank, we partied with you. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. That was cool. That and Michael Jordan are probably my favorite like star moments because it's like, oh no, that's
That's a
that,
different echelon.
that's
Yeah.
a different level. Like you're talking about an icon when you're talking about
Those two
Janet.
people are two of the biggest stars in the world. Like,
Yes,
period.
and have been for the better part
Yeah.
of our childhood, teenage, and adult lives.
Yep.
So yeah, so yeah, been fortunate to meet a lot of the stars. What do you think is? I didn't realize that Jagged Little Pill had sold 33 million albums. Like, how about this? My mind can remember that first year. I feel like she did 7 million. That
Yeah, it
like
was
she did
some
7.
big the first
She
year.
did like 7 million real quick, and I remember that, but I didn't know that it had gone to like Purple Rain Thriller type
Yeah,
numbers.
it's
Like I
way,
didn't
way,
know.
way up there.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that because it's like no, I mean Crazy Sexy Cool did 15 million, which is like phenomenal.
That's
You know what I'm saying?
huge too. Yeah.
But you're telling me that Jagged Little Pill did double that.
Yeah. Yeah. It
What
is.
what
Go ahead.
what was it? What was it about Jagged Little Pill? Like, because for me, I can look at Crazy Sexy Cool, and I can look at the times, and I can tell you exactly why that album went diamond. You know what I'm saying? Because it was the confluence of a lot of things. It was the perfect storm at the perfect time for an R&B group. And if you look at the production team they had
Yeah.
behind them,
That's
like,
the
you know,
90s.
it's like, oh no, well, it's like you
90s.
got Babyface, you got Jermaine Dupri, you got Puff, you
the big
got
hitters
Chuck,
from
you got Dallas
1990s. Yep.
Austin. Like you got all the heavy hitters up in here. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so I can see why. And just because of who they were, like specifically Left Eye and T-Boz, they had big star personality.
Right.
And Left Eye was obviously super known for burning her man's house down and dating a famous football player. So it's like there was a confluence of a lot of circumstances that made it it was very it wasn't hard to see why Crazy Sexy Cool did the numbers that it did. Why did Jagged Little Pill do those
like
numbers?
I didn't know until this morning. This is a quick sidebar that the Andre Rison House thing was before this album was released. In my mind it was after, but it was like just before, like a few months before. Okay, sorry, carry on.
This was like I think
I had
that
to get
house
my
got burned.
timeline right.
I think the burning of the house happened like in the early summer, and so this album's getting released in November. So it's literally happening like during recording time for the album. Yeah.
Okay, you were asking me something. I'm sorry.
No, I was just asking you what are the confluence of circumstances that made Jagged Little Pill explode like this? And do you think because she's Canadian, correct? Do you think that I don't know, for some reason it seems like when artists aren't from here, like from the United States, but they penetrate into the United States consciousness, it's almost like they get like a dual citizenship sales wise.
Yeah.
Did her being from Canada help the sales of this album? Like what pushed it to these astronomical, like all-time great numbers, in your opinion?
Okay, so to me, again, you know this, I assume most of the viewers know this, but just in case, Alanis Morissette had been like a Paula Abdul style pop star. Not a big star, but like had released albums. Debbie Gibson kind of, like Paula Abdul kind, like that kind of dance kind of stuff. In earlier,
And she was a TV star.
and she was a child TV star in the Justin Timberlake, or she was on like a Justin
You
Timberlake.
can't do that.
Yeah.
She was on You Can't Do That on television too.
Yeah. So people like that's part one of it, right? That's because so she would have known people, been connected to people, and would have polished a stage presence earlier in her life. That's
Mhm.
part of it, right? But I think what she does, and the reason that it became this phenomenon, is that she took the grunge-ish style music, like the heavier guitars, the heavier drums, the whatever. She can really sing too. I don't know if you listened to that Your House thing that I sent you
Mhm.
earlier. She can sing
Mhm.
like for real, for real. She doesn't get credit for that, but she can. Um, but she is also the connective tissue, musically speaking, between Joni Mitchell in the 70s and Taylor Swift now. Like, she is the one that is the point. She is the all three of those women are different stylistically, but she is the one in the 90s who was like, "I wish I had said that to my man," kind of music. Um, and despite her, like, reputation because of You Ought to Know and that kind of song, all the songs on Jagged Little Pill are not angry. They're not like,
No.
some of them are love songs, some of them are like, it's much like Joni Mitchell's Blue. It is covering like all the facets of a
You
broken relationship instead of just like "fuck you, I hate you," right? Like, it is covering all of the stuff.
you know what's crazy is that I never thought about the Joni Mitchell comparison until now. But when I think about the depth and the personal nature of the writing style of Jagged Little Pill specifically, it is very much in the vein of Joni Mitchell. Now that you're actually like pointing that out,
Joni's the
I can.
queen mother of all of this kind of music. Like, she is the
Yeah.
one where it all starts. Um,
Right.
so Alanis is part of that genealogy. Taylor Swift is part of that genealogy, and a dozen or hundreds of other women are part of that genealogy. But and lots of men too who write confessional kind of, right. I mean,
Mhm.
about relationships. That starts with her, or maybe not starts, but she is the finest practitioner of that art anyway.
Okay.
Um, so I think that's where it kind of shot off into the stratosphere. She was not an unfortunate looking human being. I mean, obviously that doesn't hurt. She was a child star, so she both had the connections and she um, had the stage presence. She had an inciting event like her breakup that set off this whole, like, the writing cycle. Um, so she had something to write about too at 19, 20, 21 years old, that a lot of people don't have. Um, but it's raw, but it's also familiar, right? Like, the emotions that she's talking about are, and I think that's one of the major reasons that Taylor Swift particularly has become such a super duper mega star, is that a lot of, or some, at least some of the appeal is that she is saying things to her exes that people wish they had said to theirs, right? Like, she's putting voice to that in a way that either that most people wouldn't do or weren't able to do. And I think Alanis is doing that as well, on this album. So it
Okay.
hits a lot of nerves for a lot of people,
Right.
um, because I don't I don't even want to restrict it to women because I love this album too, but for women
Ditto.
particularly, have all, not all, but basically all had a relationship or a breakup like this. Like, that touches some part of that thing,
Hmm.
right?
So
So,
you think she just got into the psyche of the brokenhearted?
yeah. And she got into the psyche of it because that's where she was when she was writing the song, right? Like, writing
Mhm.
songs. Like, she was able to channel that, and she had a producer, Glenn Ballard, um, who was able to help her shape those songs too. Like, all the lyrics are hers, but like, the she helped her, like, channel it, I guess, and gave her space to channel it.
What? Okay, so none of her other albums were ever as big as this.
No, the one after this, the Super Supposed Infatuation Junkie, I think is what it's called. I don't know, something. But it was big too, but that was because it was a follow-up to this, right? It was
Right.
And it has some really good songs on it. Uninvited is a great song. Thank You is a great song. But she also, my impression is anyway, um, followed the Pearl Jam, and Nirvana did it too, formula of like this huge success was maybe not too much, but like uncomfortably large. So on the next project, they pulled back, right? They did not go for songs that were quite so pop sensibility. This would have also been when Pearl Jam was having the fight with Ticketmaster, for example, like because they thought Ticketmaster's policies were unethical, and they are, and they still are. But
Yeah, yeah, they
um,
suck.
but so she was part of that wave of like, I don't know. It was Lauryn Hill did the same thing, right? I mean, this is like,
Reluctant star.
yeah, and you kind of feel, at 33 million albums or whatever, like, at what point is it enough, right? Like, and that like, I've not heard her say this, but that would be my impression. That like, I don't need all of this, so I don't have to make another pop album. And also, she was not in that spiritual place anymore, or that relationship place anymore,
Yeah, she
right?
wasn't in the broken place anymore.
Right. So you don't write songs about being brokenhearted when you're not brokenhearted. I mean, I guess you can channel that from other people or whatever, but because I've done that, but it's not. It's a lot
Yeah.
harder to do when you're not feeling that.
When it's not coming from a sincere place, though, it doesn't translate as well musically as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think, I told you this. I don't think I said it during this program, like today, but when I looked at the original Grammy list, like of the album of the year winners, I picked 10 or 12 that I thought out of what was like 50 or 60 or something like that. Well, you know what? That's probably right. And this was one of those. This was before I knew Crazy Sexy Cool was also in that cycle as well. But I like, I still think it's one of the best albums that I've ever heard. Like,
I would like to hear your analysis of Crazy Sexy Cool. What does your musical ear tell you that you're hearing about that album?
I hear, it's interesting because I hear Mike and I hear Prince both
Yep.
in it. And
Which is crazy because this is a girl group.
it's a girl, is both female, and it's a group, right? It's both of those things.
Mhm.
And so but it doesn't feel heavy-handed in a way, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't feel like they're doing it on purpose necessarily. Like when I listen to Sign of the Times, for example, I mean, he very clearly was, I'm going to make a song like Duran Duran. I'm going to make a song like Huey Lewis, and I'm going to do it fucking better than all of them, right? That seemed very clear that was his intent when he
Yes.
was
There's
making.
an objective.
Yeah.
It's a clear objective.
And this doesn't feel like that, but you hear little turns of phrase that sound like, 1990, 91, 92 Michael Jackson. You hear like songs like Red Light Special, and fuck, what was the last? There's one near the end too that's not called Let's Get It On, but it's something like that.
Let's Do It Again.
Yeah, that sounds very much like Prince. And
Babyface wrote that.
that makes sense that the two that went Prince in my head were both written by the same person.
Yeah.
It's
Comparable songwriting talent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's a hard trick to pull off, to hint at those things musically, and that's kind of what it felt like to me, like, without doing it on purpose necessarily, without making it sound like, look at me, I'm trying to do Michael Jackson, because that isn't how it comes off at all.
So I think that is one of the beautiful things about this record, is that they tried to make, so I feel like Jagged Little Pill is probably a little bit more organically big, because there's more of a theme to Jagged Little Pill than Crazy Sexy Cool in terms of like the writing and the actual songs.
Because one person wrote it, right? Like, it's
right.
Yeah.
But the goal of Crazy Sexy Cool, quite frankly, was to just make a bunch of dope ass records that
And they
people
did
could
they did
sing
do
and
that.
dance to, and they executed that. And I think sometimes people don't get enough credit for, like, you know, doing the things that you're supposed to do. It's like, oh no, we want you to, you know, do this with this record. They were like, okay, got
Here we
you,
go.
bet. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like when you ask somebody to shoot their shot and they hit their shot every time. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
can you shoot from right here? It's like, I sure
Sure.
can. Can you shoot from right here? Sure can. And so they were in a nice artistic zone that I don't think they get enough credit for. I don't think Crazy Sexy Cool, for as big as it was, gets enough credit
No.
for
I could
just
not
the
believe that it was not on the album of the year like,
yeah,
that's
it's
just
that's egregious.
unconscionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That this might be the biggest slight of all the slights, you
Yeah.
know, because it because the album checks all of the Grammys traditional boxes for
Yes,
what
it
it
does.
needs. You know, it checks the Grammys boxes. It's
It
like it
checks
checks our
sales, it
musical
checks
box.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sales, chart topping singles, high level production. Like, you know, some of it is a politic game. It's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's 1994 and Puff and Jermaine
Yeah,
Dupri
you
and
have all of these
Babyface and
guys.
Dallas Austin are on it. It's like, it's what you want from a, like, the Grammys should have wanted this album. They should have wanted to give, like, Alanis in this album some more competition than they did.
Yeah.
But I also think something too, when I go back and listen to this album, it is still very black. Like, they're three young black women from Atlanta, and you can tell they're three young black women from Atlanta. And so it still might have been a little too black
I
at the
bet.
time to get an album of the year nomination, because outside of Waterfall and Red Light Special does have some crossover appeal because of the guitar riff, and because, well, quite
That was one
frankly,
of those
Baby,
Prince things too, like, in my head, like, that's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Red Light Special is like, you could have taken, like, Red Light Special is something off of Prince's
Yeah.
classic 80s run.
Yes, it is,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Like, stylistically, song
Mhm.
wise, writing wise, if you slitted it somewhere on 1999 or
You'd be
Sign
like,
of
"Oh,
the
yeah, sure.
Times or
Absolutely."
Controversy, it would fit right on in with the
Yep.
rest of the
Exactly.
album. And so, but outside of those two songs, the songs are kind of like uniquely black. Creep,
Mhm.
Kick Your Game, you know, like it's more black phraseology. And I think maybe
Yeah.
this album, had it been released in 1999 instead of 1994, probably would have garnered different attention from the
I
Grammy
agree.
crowd to,
If this came out the year after Miseducation, for example, then
or
we're
the year
talking
before.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but if it would have came out around that time, I don't think the Grammys were ready for an album from a black female group like this, because here's the thing, like, they're not they're not fucking with In Vogue when it comes to singing. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? But, and I know that In Vogue's Funky Divas, I believe, did get some nomination love, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't
But
remember.
but TLC is a
I think
real,
it did. I think you're right.
yeah, but TLC is a real Funky Divas, is what I'm saying. Like,
Mhm.
they were
Oh, yeah.
the real, like, funky, fun ones. It's
Mhm.
not to say In Vogue wasn't that. They're just more classically trained singers who
Right.
had, like,
Oh, they're
a
incredible
great,
singers, yeah.
yeah, no. So when I want to hear, like, I mean, quick sidebar, if I just want to hear vocally somebody sing, I think In Vogue might be the greatest singing group ever. If we're just talking,
Wow.
because all four members can sing.
Mhm.
Like, they do have four lead singers.
Wow, yeah. I guess it's true,
They have,
yeah.
they have four lead singers.
Mm,
Yeah. Like, I've never heard a group with four lead singers, and that includes the Temptations. So,
mm. That actually says something about, um, the factor that race plays in this conversation too, I think,
mhm.
because they did the album that did win that year was an album that said, "I hate to bug you in the middle of dinner," and it was a slap in the face, how quickly the hours are placed, and "Are you thinking of me when you fuck her?" That's like the lead single on this
Mhm.
album. Like, and it's a raunchy in places album. Like, it's not your typical, like, um I hate my boyfriend girl, like, it's not like that.
Well,
It's
well,
furious in a way that those others aren't.
See, that's what I mean. Like Creep kind of has similar themes, and it's done in a more classic song structure type of way, but it is succinctly black, though.
Yeah. It doesn't Creep is one of those songs, like I'm listening to it in my head now. Like, that song, like, if I wasn't paying attention to the lyrics at all, I wouldn't think that it was an angry song, or I wouldn't think it was a break, like, it doesn't sound like that at all.
Right. It's so
And,
sultry and so
like,
smooth.
and if you took all of the words out of "You Oughta Know," for example, and just listen to her vocal intonation, you know that she's pissed. Like, it's
Right.
not it's a
See, that's
furious song.
so Creep is the cool side of Crazy Sexy Cool. Like T, I look him in his eyes, but all he does is tell me lies to keep me near.
Mhm.
I love my man with all honesty, but I know he's cheating on me. Yeah, yeah. Like they made it smooth. They made it
Yeah,
cool. And so it's
yeah,
like you almost like might miss the words. It's being done so sleek. Like this is what I mean. It's like Crazy Sexy Cool is like a shiny new toy.
yeah.
It was like this is what R&B sounds like now. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what I mean about it not maybe getting the notoriety it deserved. It was like, well, contemporary white America wasn't used to hearing this type of R&B, let alone it being from a group of females.
Yeah. Okay.
They're
And, like,
used to hear they're used to hearing Don't Let Go by In Vogue.
mhm,
They're used to hearing Weak by SWV. They're used to hearing like Roberta Flack and
mhm,
Shaka Khan and Aretha Franklin wail. Like these women weren't wailing about it. They were being sleek and smooth with it. Like it's a new day. I'm gonna make this shit sound cool.
mhm.
It's got a hip hop to it.
But
It's got a
I'm still pissed, don't miss
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what so I creep.
Mhm.
Yeah, just keep it on the down low. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like they made it cool. It's got a hip hop vibe to it,
yeah,
but it's still very much R&B and soul. And so
yeah.
they're doing a lot of things on that album that really hadn't been done before outside of Belle Biv DeVoe.
Mhm.
And they did it better than Belle Biv DeVoe, quite frankly.
Yeah, they did.
Like from album to album, it's like they probably no Waterfalls is bigger than Poison.
Waterfalls is
Yeah,
one of the biggest songs of the decade, period.
yeah.
Period, like,
So
yeah. And
and that's the thing about it. You want to know what's crazy about it? Like, I mean, I don't know how else to say this. Waterfalls is big because that's the song that white America grasped onto. Because for us, it was another great song on the album.
it is a
And
great song,
so
but yeah.
it was another great song on a really great album. So it's like we didn't even realize how big Waterfalls was until it's like the video came out and it started to explode. And then it was like, damn, I was like, they're playing Waterfalls like 17 times a day on MTV.
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
was
oh, I didn't
huge,
know.
huge,
I
huge.
was like, oh, I didn't know that was coming.
Yeah.
Didn't know that was coming. I think the video and the way the video was beautifully done did have something to do with it. But just in a vacuum for a song, it's like it's a great song on an album full of great songs. Like all the
Mhm.
songs on Crazy Sexy Cool are great, pretty much. I mean, I don't know. The last song with Andre's verse might be the weakest song, and that's a pretty dope song.
It is.
Yeah, Something
It is.
Wicked This Way Comes, which is another song with a message,
Yeah, it is.
you know? So they touched a lot of boxes. So
Yeah.
I just don't feel like it got I've never seen an album sell this many copies that doesn't get the like acclaim that it deserves. Like think about all the other
Yeah.
albums that sell like
I
10,
I was
15
I was
million albums.
shocked to see that it was not on the list, like, I was
But
like, having been how old were we? 13, 14, 15 years old at that time, like,
13,
I was like, "How
14.
how?" Like, that song particularly, but Creep and Red Light Special, and, like, those were everywhere, everywhere,
But here's the thing
everywhere.
about it. This is what I'm saying is that well, nobody in the black community talks about this album like they should either.
Mm,
Like if you go look, it's like go look at the other albums that have come from black artists that have sold comparable to this album, and those albums are much more revered than this album. And so it's in kind of a strange place. It's just like, how about this? Do you think the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is better than Crazy Sexy Cool?
do I? Yes, but not by as much as I thought before I listened to it all the way through.
That's what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
so look at the category that it
Okay,
should really be
it's the
held
same
in.
thing it's the same thing with Jagged Little Pill. Do I think Jagged Little Pill personally to me is better? Yeah, I do. But, like, not by much, it's not. It's not
Yeah.
by much. So, like, it's an actual conversation. Like, I don't even know what we'll talk about when we get to I think it's 99 is the year that Miseducation won, like, 38 million Grammys. Like, there's nothing that I could bring up that's gonna compete with me. Like, I know that already. There's no reason. My note on the document where I was, like, making a list of that said, "Is there a reason to talk about anything besides Miseducation?" is what I typed there. But
That album's worthy of its own show, though.
it is, absolutely, and
Hmm.
especially
But
given
it's
that it was named the best album of all time by a list that's probably not correct, but, it's still one of the best albums of all time. It
it's not
belongs on the top 15, 20. Like, it belongs in, like in that top tier, though.
just off the top of my head. I would probably have it somewhere between 14 to 17.
Yeah, that's kinda what I think too, but I
Yeah. No, I
love
mean,
that album.
it's just
That's
got to be objective. It's
yeah.
like, I think Stevie Wonder probably has two better albums. Prince has two better albums. Mike has two better albums.
Beatles have
That's
2 or
six.
3, yeah, yeah,
Right. The Beatles have two. So we're 8 albums in right there. Then there's What's Going On by Marvin Gaye.
and
There's
Joni Mitchell
Nevermind
Blue,
by Nirvana. You know what I'm saying?
and Blue
So
by
it's
Joni
like
Mitchell, yeah, sure, yeah,
Blue by Johnny. Right. So she's already like at 12 with our quick rundown. That's why it's
that's
like,
just
nah,
off
more
the
like
top of my
14
head,
to
yeah.
17. Right. That's just off the top of my head. Pet Sounds,
Mhm.
you know. Like for me, do I think the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is better than Pet Sounds? Well, for me
Yes,
personally, it's like,
I think it is too,
yes.
but, like,
Oh, you do too?
mm,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
but they're
When we have
I
these
like
musical
listening this
conversations,
is off topic, I know, but I like listening to Miseducation better. Like,
me too.
Pet Sounds, like, is is more of a it's not like in my brain like Rush and those kind of bands where I can appreciate the craft and artistry of it, and there's some
Right.
great songs on there, but,
Right.
like, as a whole
Oh,
piece of work, can I appreciate it? Yes. Was it innovative? Yes, absolutely. Did it push the Beatles to make Revolver, and did it push them to make Sergeant Pepper? Yes, it did those things, it's important, but if you're asking me which one I'd rather personally listen to all the way through, it's Miseducation, not even particularly
I
close.
agree. I mean, Rumors by Fleetwood Mac is better than the Miseducation to me.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
As a front to back, yeah,
I mean,
that's one of the
for
greatest
me,
ones that have ever been made. Yeah.
I'm about to say for me, Rumors is like if I was like making an objective list, it might be like 5 or 6 on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think Rumors in a lot of ways is better than Thriller and Purple Rain.
Mhm.
Like in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? Like because this is what I mean. Like, well, Purple Rain and Thriller don't have anything like The Chain on there. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't
There's no
have that moment where it's like, oh, it's like, well, infighting.
no, we will talk about this. We have talked about The Chain. We have for those of you who don't know, haven't followed the show, have a whole episode that's about The Chain,
Mhm.
the song, and by Fleetwood Mac. So we talked about this in depth, but we will
One of my favorite
also
songs
once we get to the 1977 or 78, I forget which one it was, Grammys. I think it came out in 77, so probably 78 Grammys. Which Rumors won, and we will have a more in-depth conversation about that album. But that
Yeah.
is maybe some of the most I don't use this phrase lightly because of how I look, but some of the most gangsta shit ever recorded. Like, I wrote a song about my ex who is also playing in the band with me. And I am not only going to write the song about him, I am going to sing the song directly in his face every night. And I'm going to make him fucking sing harmony to me telling him to go fuck himself. Like that's some cold shit.
It's one of
Like
the best
that.
moments in music history, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite songs
And The
ever.
Chain is not the only song on that album that does that either. Like there's
No,
multiple.
the album is the whole album from beginning to end is like that. I enjoy Rumors as much as I enjoy any album that I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Period. That's what I mean. Is it's like
It's
no,
so
I enjoy it. I enjoy it the same way that I enjoy um uh a sign of the times of what's going on. Like no, I
that's an
enjoy it.
incredible record.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah.
Atlanta, circle back around right at the very end here. Um, Like you said, TLC was one of the smoothest albums, and they'd make all this stuff smooth. And Atlantis, that's one of the distinctions between them two. Honestly, is Atlantis's album is a lot of things, but smooth is not one of them. This is like opening up my heart and burying it for you. And I think that is one of the reasons it connects to, like the Your House song, which for those of you who don't know, was like an acapella, an acapella song. That's kind of like the secret track. It plays after Wake Up at the end. And it's not really, and you can find it on YouTube, but it's not really like in the, when you listen to streaming versions of this album, it's not on there, which is a shame because it's the counterpoint to You Ought to Know, right? It's the opposite end of the same story.
It's the cool down.
It's the, whereas You Ought to Know is the anger and the fury. Your House is when, if you're telling the story of this relationship breaking up, that's the moment she finds out. Like that's the, I went to your house. He shouldn't break into his house, but like went to his house and was like hanging around his bedroom and wearing his robe and like, oh, this, and feeling like super romantic about it. And finds a letter that somebody else had written him saying, "Meet me at midnight." And she's like, so this is the sadness song, right? And the fact that it's a cappella, like there's no music to go along with it at all. She just sings it straight up into the mic, is, I think, amplifies it too. And she also references Joni Mitchell in that song. Like she goes to his room, puts on, finds his CDs, and I played your Joni. Like she's playing Joni Mitchell in the song. Like she name drops Joni Mitchell in that song too. So that's another one of those kind of full circle moments. So
yes,
I'm hearing draw. What do you say?
I'm hearing draw too. Because I feel like, first of all, both of these albums were super big around the same time in their respective communities. Both of these albums are end-to-end players.
Yeah.
Like I don't know where you would have a Jagged Little Pill like all time, but I would have Crazy Sexy Cool is like, when I thought about it, I was like, no, I'm like, this is one of the 30 best albums I've ever heard. So
Jagged
it's
Little
like
Pill probably belongs in that group too. Yeah.
Right. So I kind of feel like that they're like, I don't think either one of these albums is top 20 albums all time. But if you tell me that both of these albums fell somewhere between 20 to 30, I would not be surprised or have a problem with that.
I get behind that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how I feel. I feel like we're like, how about this? In Joshua Tree and Sign of the Times, it's like, oh no, those are two top 15 albums to me, maybe top 10. With this, it's like not quite that level.
Yeah.
On either side, but the next level down.
Part of that conversation, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Like part like not at that top level. You know what I'm saying? But like that next level down, like that one step down. It's like, no, that's the next step down. Like from a Joshua Tree and a Sign of the Times, the next step down is a Crazy Sexy Cool and a Jagged Little Pill. And that would make it somewhere between 20 to 30, but 35 at the like lowest
all time. That's a big statement. Like that's
yeah,
like of all the ones that have ever been made. I don't think I said this earlier too. It's an important detail though that Alanis's Jagged Little Pill won Grammy in late February of '96, and that arguably the biggest song on that album was Ironic. That was certainly the one that got played the most. And that wasn't released as a single until after she won the Grammy for this album. So it was another, I think it probably took, it was both the song and she got a Grammy bounce from it. So they released it probably like a week after.
Both of these albums stayed on the charts for 2 years.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like at least I know Crazy Sexy Cool stayed on the chart for 2 years. I think Jagged Little Pill probably stayed on it a little bit longer than that. But these two albums stayed on Billboard's top 100 for years.
Yeah,
which is usually the mark of an all-time great album. That's stuff that all-time great albums do typically. Yeah.
It's nuts. Okay, I'm happy with this being a draw. Like that's kind of what I was thinking. like I
When you
told you my initial reaction before I'd listened to them all both back to back just now, was that Jagged Pill is probably a little bit better, but not by much. But given the context and the history and all the stuff that I've just learned, like I think they're probably about
yeah.
even.
So this is what I mean is it's like, well, you know, and I've always said this, it's like, well, when it's close, I have to look at what happened behind the scenes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like what you got to look at the tail of the tape. It's like if the measurables, if the things that we can measure musically are
Mhm.
comparable, it's like, well, who had the harder road? That's why I'm bringing up. Well, it's like, well, Left Eye was the main
Well,
writer in this
TLC had a
group.
harder road. They did.
Yeah, it's
Well,
like, well, one of your three members was in fucking rehab and burned a house down while you were recording. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's like, oh, and you still made this album like under that type of like duress and strife going on within the group. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And there's also just the reputation of it because it's like Left Eye was. This is what I mean. Is like she had a big part in the album's success from the notoriety that she was gaining that had nothing to do with music. It's
Right.
like this motherfucker burned somebody's house down. It's just crazy.
And they called the album Crazy. Like that's the first word of the album too, right?
They
Like
played. They played on it, right?
used it. Yeah.
Yeah, they used it, you know. But they had the type of minds like a Puff and a Jermaine Dupri and a Babyface and a Dallas Austin that not only knew what to do musically, but knew what to do with their persona.
Mhm.
Like that's what I mean about them being more grown up and adult on this album too. It's like, you know, like y'all aren't like no more making the college dorm fun music anymore. It's like those songs were dope. We're trying to level y'all up, and they did.
Mhm.
So it's like they could like this is an album that they potentially could have fell flat on their face and the
Yeah.
public would have asked for the same thing again. And it's like they gave us something new. They gave us a new version of them. And
Mhm.
it's actually the version of them that we remember now. Nobody remembers Left Eye wearing the condoms over her
Yeah.
eyes anymore. You
Like
know what I'm
I pulled
saying?
that image to my brain like after you said it, but that's not how I think of her.
Right.
I
That's
think
not
of her
how we
getting under
think.
the waterfall with the thing on like, yeah.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Which also too is an Andre Rison thing because she's wearing the thing like a football player
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those things. She had a freaking tattoo of number 80 with the fucking falcon on her arm. Like
Yeah.
they were like, it's a very tumultuous relationship.
No, I actually wrote as one of my notes that that's probably the third most famous moment in Falcons history behind Michael Vick's getting arrested and losing the Super Bowl being up 28-3. Like those are probably the two more, but like it, after
Yeah.
that, like it's probably that, right?
I would say the Michael Vick experience in general is probably still the biggest moment in
Right.
Falcons history.
I
Like
agree.
him actually on the field and
Right.
the dog fighting stuff, like just in general, the
Yeah.
Michael Vick experience as a whole is the biggest thing. 28-3 is unacceptable, and yeah,
It
this
is
would probably
obviously,
be third.
but it is
28
a huge
three is
part of the legacy, right? Like
How about this? 28-3 has more to do with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick than it does the Atlanta Falcons, and
I
that's
agree.
why I put it at number 2. It's like, well, it would be number 1 if the greatest football player who ever lived isn't on the other side of the field.
Mhm.
Because he, like, for me, that's when he indisputably became the greatest football player of all time. It's like, no, he's the only guy that would have been able to do that. It's like they made 3 mistakes and he took advantage of all
Every
3
single one of them. Yep.
mistakes. Like
Yep.
it's
You
one
can't do
thing,
that.
like people don't understand during the course of like an NFL football game, a team might make like 10 mistakes and you're lucky to capitalize on 1 or 2. They made 3 mistakes and
He
he
paid for all of them. Yep.
dearly,
Yeah.
dearly.
It's still better than the Panthers' greatest hits, which are Ray Caruth murdering the mother of his child um and um and Cam Newton getting concussed in the Super Bowl in like the third play. Like those like that's like they didn't obviously say that he had a concussion, but he played certainly like he had a concussion for the rest of the game. And
Yeah,
I and I continue to believe that Von Miller did it on purpose. But
absolutely. It's a Super Bowl.
yeah, cut the
Like
head off the dragon, right?
well, there have been like a lot of great teams that have gone 15-1 and made the Super Bowl, but I've never seen a 15-1 team that literally won those 15 games because of one guy.
Yeah.
Like he single-handedly carried them to a Super Bowl almost. And Cam Newton doesn't get enough credit. Cam Newton's numbers are better than John Elway's at the same stretch of their careers.
Yeah. I am yeah. Uh, you know, I mean, we've talked about Cam Newton before. You know how I feel about him as an athlete,
Yeah.
and he seems like a pretty good guy too. Like not just a like he's not.
there's some Allen Iverson treatment going on where
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, they were kind of in a rush to get rid of him.
yeah. Then they should not. Again, that's probably the third most important point in Panthers history is the mistake of pushing him out the door. But um,
I really think had he just taken a year off from football and let his body heal, his career would still be going on, or it
yeah,
would just be ending right about now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well, this is a sidebar, I know, but like
nice
we got there
sidebar
at
to
least
end
from
with.
music anyway. Right.
Right.
All right.
All right. So good Thursday. I'll be on Hip Hop Talks tonight.
Yeah, everybody go listen to Hip Hop Talks tonight. They've got an interview lined up. It's going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to hearing it. I'll be probably sitting in the studio, um, watching and listening. But yeah, it's going to be a good show. So go check that out tonight if you have not checked
Yeah.
out the Hip Hop Talks station or the Hip Hop Talks channel. You should go do that. These guys know more about hip hop. Have forgotten more about hip hop in the last week than I've known my whole life. So they will teach you some stuff too.
Yeah. At some point, we're going to have a show and we're going to bring you on because I'd like to have you on Hip Hop Talks, but we're going to like wait for the right moment and the right time to do that. Yeah. But I feel like that's coming this year, though. Like I was actually thinking, like it would be a good idea to have you on when J. Cole's album drops.
It was a North Carolina thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but make sure everybody click like and subscribe to Mirror Music as well. Andrew and I have been at this for a couple years strong. Pushing the boundaries, touching people, reaching conversation. We got word from Sean that very famous woman in Hollywood actually got wind of our podcast, which makes us smile.
Yeah, man.
You know,
That
made my day.
That made my day too.
It's like, you know who that is? It's like, hell yeah, I know who that is. It's one of my favorite actresses, actually.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
we're not gonna name drop her and put her on blast, but she knows who she is. So thank you we appreciate you for like actually watching us and we got like Sean, tell her we got actually years worth of content for her to go through. Like if she wants to check it out, I always tell people it's like we're perfect for an airplane ride. You know that, right?
Yeah, it's an airplane ride's length of show. It's also calmer, right? Like for me personally, if I'm on a plane, I'm not trying to listen to people argue with each other, right? I'm not trying to listen to like something to raise my blood pressure.
Our discourse is a healthy, peaceful one, and that's why I say that it's good for flights. It's like me on Hip Hop Talks. I don't know if you should listen to that on the airplane.
It's a different not persona, but different part of your personality, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and it's entertainment. You have to find different ways to entertain people. Like the discourse that you and I have is more conversational, and we're crossing over the lines of what a black man traditionally listens to and what a white man traditionally listens to, and how that ties into the socioeconomic status, how that ties into racial inequality. It's like, so we touch on a lot of things that are tenuous, quite frankly, through the music. And I think in order to do that, you have to have a certain approach and a frame of mind. And so like my frame of mind, and also because of our lifelong friendship, it's like, so my approach to this discourse with you, of course, is different than my discourse on Hip Hop Talks, but all part of my personality. So
no, we have to. The show wouldn't work if we hadn't been friends for almost 30 years. So it just doesn't.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
There's things I can say to you and things I can ask you and vice versa too, right? That we can say that I would not necessarily ask or say to people who haven't known a very long time.
I actually think that's the best part of the show, is that I think we ask each other honest questions that I feel like black people and white people would want to ask each other, but they don't, because they don't have that relationship with somebody on the other side truly to be able to ask those questions. It's like, no, it's like you and me ask each other the tough questions. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And that's a real friendship thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
all right, let's get out of here. I'll see y'all next time. Take care. Be good, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yes, sir.